where was me getting all concerned that I'd have no animated movie news to cover this month? I mean, a compilation trailer is more than enough, but I certainly wasn't expecting it. Yes, Netflix have just gone full-on all-in with their animated movies, releasing footage and announcements left, right, and center, marketing themselves as the place to go for animation. And judging by all the different things they're showcasing, currently, I agree. Now, we've already done a video on the brand new Wallace and Gromit Vengeance Most Foul, complete with the returning penguin of old and very popular. And we may do a follow-up super deep dive out of some of these other projects later throughout the week. However, today we're going to cover the big compilation in general, as there is a lot of other stuff in store for us from the big red N and all of its ba-bum charm. All in all, we've got Ultraman, a Terminator anime project, an animated Tomb Raider project with Hayley Atwell as Lara Croft, an anime project also starring Hayley Atwell, Zack Snyder's new Norse God series, K-pop Demon Hunters, another Jurassic World series, an animated Ghostbusters project, the Twits, Exploding Kittens, that's getting a thing too, a couple cheap-looking fairy tale movies, another generic-looking Christmas movie, simply called That Christmas, and, of course, the incredibly head-scratching Sandy Cheeks movie. Not to mention the Wallace and Gromit we've already established, and the big next season for Arcane. Now, I'm not gonna lie, not a lot of these are actually my bag, personally. But to be honest, it's just that classic Netflix thing, where they fire so much stuff at you that looks exciting, when in fact there's a lot of mediocrity embedded within. But really, it's a library to scroll, so scroll we all shall. I mean, some of the choices in the trailer were quite interesting, to say the least. SpongeBob saying something about streaming services seems to either be made for the trailer, but now I have a horrible feeling that that's actually gonna be in the movie, which is, well, at least it's not cancelled. It was certainly delayed and leaked, but Sandy Cheeks movie, what a time. I don't think I needed to know that apparently Bikini Bottom has Netflix, but now we do. Although I guess, to be fair, the only thing we knew SpongeBob watched before this was some sort of vague coral porn. I do wonder what the back door between Paramount and Netflix is, as, I don't know about you, but Paramount Plus and the wider company there kind of need a bit of a boost right now, so they've had to find those new owners just to save themselves after all, so it's odd that there's a shaking hands opportunity with what's essentially a streaming rival. Nonetheless, there are some interesting projects in here too, so we're just gonna blast through a bunch of them. So yes, post SpongeBob, they're taking another stab at the old Tomb Raider. During the dark times of every video game movie being terrible, each attempt at this one may have been bang average, but that was enough for them to be perceived as the better attempts of the video game genre back in the day. That really was the dark times. They had the original run with Angelina Jolie, the reboot with Alicia Vikander, that did not do that great at the box office. Although in fairness to that case, it did come out literally weeks after Black Panther absolutely stormed the box office and pop culture as a whole, so what you gonna do there? This time, they are intending to do it as an animated series, with Agent Carter herself, Hayley Atwell, voicing Lara Croft. And to be honest, I think maybe that fits better in the animation field. When you've got video game stories like Lara Croft and Uncharted, it's the gigantic spectacle that is such a buzz that drives the series, and you can do that in live-action CGI, but it's very expensive and asking for a lot of returning gross in order to make a profit off of all of that, you know? Keep it animated, and I feel like you can do far more. It's a big shame that it's in 2D. I would have preferred it in 3D because, I don't know, I'm an animation schmuck that way. But hey, it seems nice enough. Perhaps if it does get success for its first season, it can get a bigger budget for season 2, because it looks pretty flat to me. And as mentioned before, this is the first of a couple projects that Hayley Atwell has going on at Netflix, so fair play to her. Get that dollar, why don't you? Speaking of which, that other project of hers is called The Imaginary. Not to be confused with the new horror movie with the teddy bear, or indeed John Krasinski's If about imaginary friends. Now, this is actually a 2023 Japanese release, which has since got a US dub for its Netflix debut. However, the story is in fact based on a British novel by A.F. Harold. Much like food, I guess every country has every contribution to this movie. The Imaginary, meanwhile, looks like a fantastic Studio Ghibli clone, and while that might come off as a negative of how dare you copy someone else's art aesthetic, I think it's actually quite nice to be able to be accessible to more Studio Ghibli-esque projects. If anime can have a million projects with the same art style, why can't we have more Studio Ghibli-likes, you know? I think it's very appealing. It opens up the door for me to immediately want to emotionally invest myself in whatever story it is of a young child flying a bird. And it's a more diverse art style from the rest of the stuff that Netflix is throwing all out at once. As can be deduced, the film is also about imaginary friends, because apparently that's what 2024's vibe is, just imaginary friends and desert movies. I guess also, if you're in the desert long enough, you'll get an imaginary friend eventually. Yeah, there's a logic there. We're past multiverse now and just outright making things up. Anyway, also coming on the anime front, we have Leviathan, also based on a book by Scott Westerfield. Arguably one of the more interesting projects, the premise of this one is an alternative version of World War I, where the big breakthrough in modern warfare was mecha-type war machines called clankers. I'm sure it's much deeper than this, but I'm just thinking of a World War I version of Pacific Rim is probably going to be the vibe there. This book series is also a trilogy, so they could easily make more if it goes well. And I guess really showing my colors as a real animation fan schmuck, I also am not a fan of this style of 3D. You know what I mean? No, you probably don't. I think specifically the anime genre, when they try and do 3D CGI, can be very uncanny. If you do it like Lupin the Third the First, then yeah, that looks great, adapted from the anime style in 3D. This, I'm less convinced. But it is quite a common trend for lots of anime to do this these days, and a lot of Netflix shows as well to have their animations done on 2s to make it look different. I'm not a fan of it. Sorry. Then we have the Terminator anime series, starring Timothy Olyphant as said Terminator, and will be set within the Terminator franchise's ongoing continuity. Though, as I understand it, the time travel shenanigans basically rule out any aspect of these movies having continuity the further you go. I don't know much about this one, but it's definitely an interesting place to take a property like this. Very much a, oh, this exists and it's on Netflix, who'd have thought, you know? In fact, it's interesting to see how this and Tomb Raider, both of whom didn't really do too well in their latest theatrical installments, have switched to animation and gone onto Netflix. I wonder if that's because Netflix is taking a dive trying to formulate these failing franchises into something successful, or whether it's these unsuccessful franchises taking a deal with Netflix because they'll probably pay them up front, as I understand their sort of business model. Maybe it's a symbiotic relationship, maybe it's a dive. Does Netflix know something we don't? Is there a niche for making 2D animes out of Western stories? I mean, these two stories are a little bit like a certain set of ghoul-grabbing exterminators who have also just announced a series with Netflix as well. And though this wasn't in the compilation trailer, I presume they're only just getting going with it, as Ghostbusters are getting a series produced by Sony Animation, a studio that continues to take very interesting directions. Could this be the Spider-Verse of the Ghostbusters movie? Absolutely not. I'm just saying that now. However, it's definitely interesting. As far as I know, this isn't common practice for Sony Animation to be making a series. I certainly hope it doesn't stretch them like Pixar has recently, but who am I kidding? My guess would be this will be in the vein of Jurassic World Chaos Theory. Hey, segue! Yeah, they're doing another one of these! I have no idea if the first of this series was any good, but as with the movies, this franchise seems to make a lot of money regardless of critical reception. If you ever get round to having the spare time to watching a full series of this and it's worth it, maybe I'll catch up so I can understand what the hell's going on here. But post-pandemic, I do know it still made over $1 billion in its sleep. People just love dinosaurs, man, and that's pretty much the only rationale you need here. I also believe I saw that it is actually connected to the main Jurassic World movies, as it takes place during the same incident, and you can cross over events between the two projects in like the timeline, and it makes sense, which is genuinely really cool. Hey there, thank you for making it halfway through this video. We do our best to cover every animated movie trailer, so do subscribe if you're interested in keeping up with all of the news. And the minute we're uploading practically daily with all sorts of different series. But for now, I'll let you get back to the rest of the big old Netflix trailer compilation, and all of the thoughts and production details there are to know on the side. Something else that's also made a lot of money are the Exploding Kittens card games, now set for a full-on animated series. I mean, go off them, I would do the same if I had such gaming success. Kind of a byproduct of the peak millennial humor era, you know, the Charlie the Unicorn Astif movie, you know, they're bedfellows at Cards Against Humanity, that kind of era. And to be fair, it looks like the wild and edgy humor from the game seems very much intact. I mean, come on, it's called Exploding Kittens. You can't make a tame version of this. Once again, we find ourselves with the Angry Birds conundrum of a game that seems to be very one note in what happens. You know, birds get catapulted, cats blow up. You know, that's just how nature works. However, in fairness, it does look like they've really gone in at making this show completely insane, so fair play to them. It'll be a very curiously interesting series to watch, if you're that crazy a fan of card games. And speaking of making a show completely insane, I'd like to say that it could be the same for the Sandy Cheeks movie, but I don't want to. I've very much made my stance on this new wave of SpongeBob movies known. Everything Sponge on the Run onwards just seems like a massive slap in the face for now past creator Steven Hillenburg, who specifically said no to sequels, prequels, and spin-offs. These characters are designed to be in an episode less than 10 minutes long. They did a great job expanding on them in the first movie. That's now 20 years old, and the more they balloon these characters out, the less interesting they are. I'm willing to be proved wrong, and to be fair, Sandy was absolutely screwed over by the original movie. It's like the one criticism thing I have about that one. She has one line that isn't all hail Plankton. So it is about time that she takes center stage. I just don't think this Sponge on the Run era of movies with Netflix are something I can honestly invest confidence in. The animation is about the only thing with some artistic merit, and even then, it looks like they've got a bit cheaper with that style in this one. So I don't know, I'm sure I'll find more things to be angry about with this movie, but we'll park it there for now. Rest in peace, Steve. Sorry about Nickelodeon. Moving on, we have the big budget Ultraman movie. Not gonna lie, jumping from Gromit quietly lamenting being covered in condiments to suddenly Ultraman screaming towards the screen was quite the transition. Not quite a jump scare for me, but I bet it caught somebody out. Nonetheless, I love the look of the animation in this. The quirky Marvel-esque humor tint is a bit worrying, but visually I'm impressed. And to be honest, I didn't really hate the one of him getting beaten into a building and he's upset like an unconfident child. Now this is one of the projects that we did actually know about beforehand, so if you want to know more about it, we've already done a video on the production of this one, and it is quite the story, so do check it out, as it opens up a whole rabbit hole about the genre of tokusatsu, and connects to things like Power Rangers, Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, and Ultraman. Because it is Ultraman, that was the full circle. We've also already done a video on Zack Snyder's new project about Norse mythology, which is titled Twilight of the Gods. Finally, there's some visuals for this movie. Now I can actually make a thumbnail about it if I really wanted to. And honestly, with a title like Twilight of the Gods, I feel like you could slap that onto a few of his movies and it would still kind of make sense. We'll see how that turns out. Still quite low on details for that one. Again, we have a video on it. Take a look if you'd like. But something we haven't done a video on, and is probably a surprising star, at least for me, oddly enough, is K-pop Demon Hunters. A wild premise that weirdly still makes sense, I think. It centers around a world-renowned K-pop group, probably a chip off of Blackpink or something, and you'll never guess what their by-night side hustle is. Forget Hannah Montana, these guys come off of stage and mess up some demons. And this is a full movie, set for 2025. Interestingly, it's an American effort with Netflix directly involved, as opposed to a Korean import. Also, it is co-directed by the guy who did Netflix's Wish Dragon. And that's an interesting fit, though it does make me wonder if this will fall into the generic-looking Netflix animation category, rather than the edgy K-pop project we actually want. Oh boy, some of this stuff, as far as I'm concerned, could just be footage from another Netflix animation from 5 years ago that looked exactly the same. We're sitting in that Venn diagram of movies that visually sit between Wish Dragon and that Christmas Carol where they made Scrooge hot. That's the tier of Netflix animation I'm talking about, you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, I'm all for some of these movies actually turning out to be great. I'm just saying that they all kind of look a little samey with the artistic style. Two of the projects in the trailer were sat right next to each other in the running order, and literally could have been the same movie had they not put the different movies' titles at the bottom. We'll see with those, I guess. One of those is Spellbound, which we actually did know about right before the year started, but we only had a single image to go off of, presumably being about dealing with monster parents in a fairy tale land. And then you've got In Your Dreams, which will have all sorts of dream sequences with a little bit of that Alice in Wonderland vibe. We finally get to see in animated form the Roald Doll adaptation of The Twits. Very much, I guess, a Netflix response a few years later to Illumination making Dr. Seuss movies. I'm actually very open-minded to this movie. I did enjoy The Twits as a book as a child, as much as I remember none of the details now. This seems like a nice, fun, artsy-looking project that I'll probably enjoy on the side without really needing to think about it too much. It's not going to break any boundaries, it's just a bit of fun. And that's very Roald Dahl, really. Big Mouth got some content. I'm going to skip that one, personally. And that Christmas, while I did just mention it as a pretty generic-looking Christmas movie, and also comes out all the way out in December, so it's quite an early time to release this trailer, I guess technically. This is a movie we've actually mentioned a handful of times now, as this is set to be the second movie produced by Locksmith Animation. This is like the newest 3D animation studio to really come out. They made a few years ago Ron's Gone Wrong, and I really enjoyed that movie, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing whether this second production comes out well. It does have to clash with Wallace and Gromit, so it might not be the one I watch on day one, but we'll see. Beyond that, bookending this entire trailer is the real highlight from Netflix, the series that won Netflix so many awards. It is, of course, Arcane Season 2, which I am incredibly hyped for. The visual aesthetic for this series as well is just so brilliantly dynamic compared to everything else we've seen, being a beautiful blend of sort of that 2D painted aesthetic, but done in 3D. I guess the backgrounds are still 2D. Fantastic work. I need to kind of binge watch the original season again to keep up with the actual plot points, I reckon. But it is probably one of the most successful video game adaptations, probably because it's only in-universe. It's not a direct story adaptation. Netflix knows this is the big hitter to really sell subscriptions again after they duped people over by removing the ability to share passwords, because of course every company has to come with an asterisk when you have phrases these days. But even still, yes, very, very excited for that, of course. The sun does rise in the morning. But of course, the one I'm really here for is the one I immediately made a video on, Wallace and Gromit. I'm sorry. By the way, something we didn't actually mention in our Vengeance Most Foul video from a couple days ago is this is actually going to be a 70 minutes long movie. This is the first feature-length Wallace and Gromit outing since Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. We're getting something over an hour long with Feathers McGraw in it, and considering he just existed for the 30-minute show the last time, it's literally going to triple his screen time by the time it's done. But I'll stop rambling to you about Wallace and Gromit with my Britishness and all that. But anyway, that is the dissection of Netflix's animation trailer compilation drop that I was not expecting. Did they do this last year? I didn't even notice. There's some good, there's some not so much. There's stuff that's not really for me, but very well could be for you. Netflix, with its audiences practically as wide and generic as it can be, with its 270 million subscribers, so I'd love to hear which ones you're particularly interested in. I've heard Jurassic World Chaos Theory has a big, rampant fan base. I'm just not within it. And as we get more information, I'll of course cover most of these, mainly the 3D ones. And hey, some dedicated videos may come out still afterwards, like the Sandy Cheeks movie that probably has a lot more to talk about. And admittedly, I'd probably be a lot more personally excited for any of these if it was, you know, in the cinema, but hey-ho, what you gonna do? Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. I'll be ending it off here. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video, and I shall see you in a little bit.